will have a dramatic consequences in the future that doesn't work anymore, free to express themselves. 2035 is 13 years away from now. Hi, I'm Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. Did you know that we have in Finland actually much more than dancing prime minister? We have indeed a society which is ready for the next step on global stage, and I tell you what that is. You know that we have come to the point in the world history where we need to show what is the type of the society that can be sustainable. By sustainable, I mean the type of society that is economically, ecologically, and socially sustainable. Because whatever we do now will have a dramatic consequences in the future. So we better be doing something good. And societies this far have been built on the premise to create an economy that works for the rest of the society. But we have not so much thought about how this economy is related to the ecology or to the social, even if we recognize those ideas. But the real driver of our societies this far has been basically built on premise that we, each of us, are pursuing our own individual goals, and then we leave the rest for the society. Now in the future, that doesn't work anymore, because we cannot compile these individual goods just to artificially build them on something that looks like, okay, we have a collective goal, we have a collective direction. It doesn't work that way anymore. Instead of collecting all this private interest and try to see that, well, at the end of the day, this works for the total good, we need to have a society that has a clear direction from top to the bottom, and there is enough interaction between the decision-making bodies and the citizenship. If the leaders on the top think that, well, they know what's best for the citizens, they always by definition go wrong, because their life is very different to those that are living in the streets, having their ordinary lives. So there needs to be interaction. But what's more to that, there also needs to be a genuine interest by the people, not only to build their own households, their own economy, having their basic needs fulfilled, but they need to be fulfilled with the spirit that they also want to contribute to something much larger than themselves, their household, their families. And only with that, we can create a spirit that builds the type of the society which is truly sustainable. Finland has been working for a long time to build this type of elements that makes up this sustainability. And I like to pick up 5 different aspects of this type of development. The first aspect of that type of the society we're talking about here is that it has a very high equality, meaning that it's not the type of the society which is very strongly put to the different layers, ones who are extremely rich, a lot of people who are extremely poor. That kind of a society can never ever work in such a way that it builds any kind of a sustainability, because there would be too many people there that are truly suffering, and that's never good. So you need to be able to build this equality into the culture of a society and having concrete expressions of that. One of the very concrete expression is the education. You need to have an education which is accessible at all levels to people, regardless where they come from, who are their parents, what type of the income levels their family comes from, and so forth. And that is where Finland has done a great job. Over decades, almost over the centuries, there is a very inclusive education system. This system is not only restricted to the primary school, secondary school, tertiary universities and such, but it's also about other institutes that support learning throughout people's life. What we call the lifelong learning truly becomes possible. Because education is a great equalizer of any type of the society. That really needs to be there, kind of building the foundation for sustainable society. The second aspect of sustainable society, it's a society where people are free to express themselves. Expressing yourself freely is a domain of culture. You need to have a culture in the society that enable people to freely express themselves. But of course, with that freedom comes also responsibility. So that doesn't mean that you can create, for instance, hatred as a free expression. But there should be an idea that if the freedom is totally allowed, then also responsibility comes with it. And lo and behold, when you do that, that is exactly what happens. And you see in all of those countries that do not respect this principle, people are not happy. People are not happy because they cannot express the way that they feel is righteous to them. Even if other parts of their life are relatively good, secure, jobs, everything, but they cannot freely express themselves, they're gonna feel it, because we humans are carrying that thing ourselves. And particularly in the modern times, when we all are quite educated, we are quite informed, we have indeed a lot of opinions, and we need to be able to express themselves in a way that doesn't harm the others. That judgment needs to be left to us. That is the second critical component. Finland has been very good in that. We are free here to express ourselves. And that has been tested over the times, even some really hard times. That makes one critical aspect while people feel relatively content here. That is one of the reasons, among others, why Finland tops the list of most happy countries. So that's the second feature of sustainable society, freedom to express yourself. The third critical aspect of sustainable society comes from our relationship with nature. We have to have a feel for nature. We have to care for nature. We have to have this connection. We need to appreciate nature. We need to be able to put our hands onto the soil and feel the soil. Because if we don't have that, we get detached from the nature and the needs of that nature. And you know, we are living in the times when a lot of our problems arises of the fact that we don't have that feel for the nature. We are polluting nature. We are extracting things from the nature without ever a thought about that we should actually give back. And if we continue to do that, of course, there comes a moment when nature sort of revenges. It bounces back what we have not or have given to the nature. So there needs to be this kind of reciprocality. Finland is a country which is known that people have a lot of affinity to nature. We like to go to our little summer cabins and go to the forest to explore whether there are berries or mushrooms or what have you, or to ski in the winter. And even if our lifestyles have somewhat changed here, there is still a very strong feeling about that, which makes it also that this idea of caring the nature can be easily built into the policies, because what is at stake in many cases is that either we want to extract and make use of the nature without thinking about the consequences, or we do that in a collaborative way with the nature. Now, I'm not saying that Finland is a perfect country in that terms, but what I'm saying is that we have practiced that. We have gotten somewhere with that, and we can build on that basis because there is still a connectivity between Finnish people and the nature. The fourth aspect of sustainable society is that we have a strong sense of a community, so that we are not detached from our community, from our nation, from the feel of our people. We have the advantage here in Finland, which is that we have a relatively small country with hardly 5+ million people. So that gives us an advantage that it's easier to form in this type of a country a feel of community on different levels. The other thing is that we are also relatively homogenic in terms of our culture, our language and so forth. And that is also helpful, but that is not enough. There needs to be something more in that. And I think what's more in that is that we have a feel in our community that we really need to help to those ones that are, for one reason or another, marginalized. And we want to help. If we are relatively well off, that we have a will to help the weak ones, those ones that for some reason have been put into the situation when they are not well off. This is the very reason why the idea of the welfare society has been advanced relatively very far here in the Nordic countries and in Finland. So it's a kind of a concrete and practical expression of this good feel that you need to have as something that glues together the community. It is the spirit of contributing to other people's well-being, not necessarily yours, but the others. Because that's the real way how you actually build this caring kind of a spirit into the community. Finland has been relatively good in that. We have a lot of that type of the spirit. Again, I'm not saying it's perfect, it's far from that. But there is a good basis on which to build. The fifth and the final ingredient for sustainable society is that it needs to be future oriented rather than being the society which is leaning heavily on the past. In the cultures that are become out of the circumstances, adaptive to new conditions, they learn this, that you better move before you get moved. You cannot lean back all the time because there are no bananas that are here around and you can kind of reap them all year round. This is not the case in Finland. In that sense, we are surely not living in the paradise. But we have learned over the decades and centuries to adapt rapidly to new conditions and look for new opportunities as well. And this looking for the new opportunities and also seeing the dangers early enough is very critical. Because in our times, even if you have found something really fundamental that where people feel good about it and comfortable, that may not be the material for the future. That you need to sort of kill some of your darlings, as British say. But that you have to be able to leave the past, to be on the past and move forward and hear the invitations of the future. Here in Finland, in modern times, we have been the pioneers of building these type of institutions in Finland to try to forecast, to try to have a foresight into the future. We were the first country that built a parliament committee for future. Today, we also have a lot of other practices, such as interaction between parliament and the government, that give each of their term a futures report, looking at certain sector in the society and what needs to be done with that. But this goes just an example. So there is a lot of this future orientation, how to adopt new technologies, how to improve our performance. And that comes, I believe, from this kind of adaptive cultures and conditions that we have learned over the past history. I believe that we have gathered something truly precious. Again, I'm not saying this is perfect, but what I'm saying is that it's a very unique way of dealing with the issues that comes from the future rather than comes as a inheritance from the past. So, summarizing, there are these 5 key elements that builds up the sustainable society. High level of equality, for instance in terms of education, freedom to express yourself, strong sense for the nature, deep feel for community, strong leaning towards future, to see the opportunities there rather than to repeat in the past. I believe that Finland could be the one that put itself to the global stage by building on these 5 elements and becoming truly the first advanced ecological welfare society in the whole world. In Finland's official policy, there is a target to become a carbon neutral society in 2035. 2035 is 13 years away from now. Being a carbon neutral does not make it, but if carbon neutral is achieved together with these qualities that I just described, then that would truly present the image of the society for the future. Or to put it other way, it would be the society of the future that we all need, not only we Finns, but the whole world needs that type of societies. And as far-fetched and abstract that sounds, that is exactly where we're gonna be heading, whether we want it or not, because that needs to be the direction where we are leading our society from here on. Subscribe to my channel, share this video with your friends, look for related videos and give your account. What do you think is the truly sustainable society? Let's interact.